So I just rolled credits on As Dusk Falls, and I wanted to give you my review really quick. Um, As Dusk Falls is a really interesting game. It wasn't what I expected. I didn't know what to expect going in. I didn't really like the art style, and I had no idea what they were trying to sell us. So, being that cynical and unexcited about the game, I had to check it out. So, I've collected a few thoughts, and I thought I'd share them with you right now. Let's dive right in. Thanks so much for watching. If you like my videos, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that bell to know when my content goes live. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Just had to fix my hair really quick. All right, let's dive into this review. So like many of you, I went in with very low expectations. Didn't like the art style. I didn't get why we would be connected to these characters. I didn't get it. Playing it, it turns out it's really just a choose your own adventure show or comic book. Or what it really reminded me of was one of those old radio dramas where you would have to decide, well, not decide, you would sort of learn every week about the fate of these characters. Maybe I'm just old and none of you have ever heard a radio drama, but I really enjoyed it. I actually really liked it, and I found a lot of the decisions to be very weighty, and I like that a lot. It seems like you can have a significant impact on the outcome of each chapter with your choices, which in turn is going to affect what a character's ending winds up being at the end of the game. I thought that was really cool. You know, one of my big problems with Mass Effect was I felt like none of your decisions really mattered. Sure, stuff could happen. Some pretty significant stuff could happen, but this felt different. You can actually see the branches where your story diverges based on the decisions that you've made. And there are some pretty long stretches of story that I didn't experience during my playthrough. And I find that really intriguing that they've built a system where, sure, vastly different things can happen between the characters, but there's still more on the table that maybe you missed. The end of the game does leave on a bit of a cliffhanger, which wasn't really what I expected. So I do wonder how they're going to handle that going into whatever the next entry turns out to be in As Dusk Falls. I've laid out that this is sort of a choose your own adventure game, but at the end of the day, I have to say the gameplay is really light. So really this is more of like, I would just say this is more of like an interactive comic book or those old interactive Goosebump books that I liked in high school, where you actually get to see the outcome and the vastly different outcome of your decisions. So as a game, I don't know. I think I would almost say it's a bit of a stretch to call it a game. There's gameplay elements in there, but what is there is good. I really, really enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the elements of figuring out how you're going to handle each of the situations that are presented to you. And, you know, it's kind of emotional at some of the moments, especially if you can identify with any of the characters throughout. The gameplay, though, it's mostly just swipes and button taps and fairly meaningless, right? Like maybe you fall down, but you kind of still end up having the same outcome by the end of the game. I don't think there were any truly impactful moments. There were moments I would purposely just fail the input prompt because I didn't want my character to do that. And the game just sort of let that happen. And it didn't sort of really, like, instead of hitting somebody with something, I'm like, well, I don't really want to hit that person. I'm not mad at them. So I would just let the prompt fail, and then whatever would happen, right? So as a video game, it's not really that fun because all you're doing is like clicking or swirling your mouse or tapping a button, right? So the video game aspect, the gameplay aspect is really, really light, but the storytelling aspect is incredibly strong. And that more than makes up for the minuscule amount of gameplay. As a matter of fact, I actually like that they were really light with the gameplay elements, because they were able to focus so much on the story that they wanted to tell and how they wanted to tell it with all these branching paths. The story I'm really positive on. what's told is really enjoyable. Well, enjoyable in that you're sort of taken on this journey throughout the game. And there's some big questions in there, like how does PTSD affect a person over years? How do your decisions end up impacting these characters by the end of the game? And how their lives change based on what you've decided to do throughout your playthrough. That's really, really cool. What choices would I make as a husband get in certain situations with a wife and a child, right, to be considering? Where I'm at in my life now, my personal life, actively gives me pause in a lot of those father moments, for example, when presented with those options. There's also like a period where you're dealing with a couple of characters who are in high school, and you know, it kind of takes you back to when you were at that point in your life. And for me, it's a little campy. You're just kind of like, okay, but they're kids, so you kind of identify with them from that aspect or that perspective, right? With the expectation that sure, you could play the game and live out a fantasy, but the way that I really like to play it was to pick the most organic answer that came to me and just select it as fast as I possibly could. And when you see the results screen at the end of each book or chapter, or however they have like something, they have it's like called books, and it's also chapters. So there's 6 total chapters in the game and 2 books or something like that. I don't really understand why they have both, but whatever. Maybe we're going to get a new book with like 3 chapters in it. I don't really understand what's going on there. But at the end of each, you kind of get to see where you rate as a player and what's important to you. And seeing those branching story elements was really, really cool. It reveals some stuff about you and how you decided to play the game, and maybe some stuff that you might like about yourself, and some stuff that you're like, yeah, maybe that's not the greatest, but yeah, you're probably right. There's several stories that happen during the games. Like I said, you take the role of a father, you take the place of some high school kids, and there's some, I don't want to get too spoilery, but each is interesting, and they're all sort of intertwined in a way that makes sense. Like these characters end up intertwined in a way that is believable and that I really, really liked. Some characters I really just did not like. So they'll be asking for help from you, and I'm just incredibly rude to them or standoffish. And like I've made a moral decision about how I feel about these characters, and I'm going to do absolutely nothing. I want them to have to be even vindictive. Like I want them to have a bad outcome. I don't agree with how they're doing it. And even if there's other characters who are bad, you kind of you're given this moral quandary of like, well, both of these characters are bad. Who are you going to side with at the end of the day? And I like that it forces you to think about that and how you want to do that. There's other characters who I was more sympathetic towards, and I would make decisions where I would say, okay, I really want this person to have the best possible outcome that I possibly could. But again, they're intertwined with other characters. So sometimes maybe you're making the right decision for one character, but maybe a really poor decision for another. But I like that that's there, if that makes sense to anybody. The voice acting is really, really good throughout. The sound design is really good. Like the atmospheric sound design, the music sort of tying into each scene, I really, really like. I think the voice acting is pretty good. I never felt like anything was too camp or too forced. The characters in their voice acting roles, they felt like they belonged there. They seemed like they were cast properly, and they did a really, really good job with this. Like I said, it reminded me of those radio dramas where you would just sort of be along for the ride, but you actually get to affect this one and pick where the ride ends up at the end of the day. So I started playing this game and I was really cynical. I didn't get the art style. I didn't get what they were going for. So I had to give it a shot, right? I'm like, okay, am I really right? Is it just bad? Is it way off base? And I wasn't right. I actually enjoyed what they did here. It's not really a game, though. It's more of this really cool interactive story that they've built with very minor gameplay elements. It's one of the stronger narrative stories where they really focus on storytelling and how you affect the outcome of these characters. And I really, really appreciate that. It stands out for me because the decisions that I made had such dramatic consequences for each scenario. Like you can see major divergences in the timeline that could have happened should you have gone another way. So that encourages more playthroughs if you really want to just play totally different from your style and see where things would have ended up. The real question, though, is would I recommend this to other people? And that's sort of a tough question to answer. So I would have to ask you, do you like these types of games? Do you like a story that you can get really in? Do you like a story that you really get to affect the outcome of? Not like the Telltale games. In the Telltale games, it's like, do you want Bob or Andy to die? And then you're just stuck with Andy. And then eventually Andy just screws off and does whatever he wants, right? I love the original Walking Dead, for example, but I felt like a lot of the decisions you make just have no weight. I'm telling you, the decisions in this game, they have a drastic effect on what happens by the end of the game. And that I find really interesting. If that sounds intriguing to you, and this genre is even of mild interest, I'd highly recommend giving it a shot. As Dusk Falls is available now. It's on Xbox Game Pass. It's on Steam. It's on Xbox Game Pass PC. It's on the cloud. And I'd love to hear your thoughts if you played it about the experience of As Dusk Falls. It's a big surprise for me because I went in really, really cynical and came out on the other end and saying, hey, there's some really great narrative moments here, story moments here that make you think about how you interact with just real life and what you would do in tough situations. And a lot of them I think people are going to identify with. I really, really enjoy it. Let me know what you think. And thank you for watching this review. I really appreciate it. If you like my content, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell to know when it goes live. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I do appreciate that. If you would like to become a member of this channel, memberships are turned on. Thank you to the members for supporting me and allowing me to do something like this. I really appreciate it. You can click that join button right down there. Thank you so much. I'm going to get out of here, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.